once you've downloaded the file for the movie Flash tutorial and you've opened it, you'll come across a screen that looks like this. Now it has 4 buttons on it at the moment. Now I want to open up a couple of extra windows, so if you can go to Window menu, and we want the timeline, we want some tools, and we also want a thing called a library. So you'll notice that it gives you a number of different tabs, and we can put these all together so that it fits a little bit nicer on the screen. Now the very first thing I want to do is put a background into this movie. So what we're going to do is, if I can get everyone to click on where it says background, BG background, and I've clicked in the first frame here. Now I'm going to go to the library, and what I want is I want an image to put in here, and the image I'm going to use for this one is called Theatre Background. You'll notice it's in the folder there called Images. So I'm going to bring Theatre Background out and move it so that it's on the screen. I just moved it up so it fits nicely into the corner, and you'll notice that it goes behind the buttons. And the reason for this is that this background layer here is the bottom layer, so it's actually underneath everything else. So that's the first thing that we want to do. Now the next thing I want to do is show you how to add buttons. Now the first thing I'm going to do is lock that background layer, so now I can't move or change or do anything to the background layer. So the next thing I want to do is click in the button layer. Now you notice some of the buttons highlight. So what that's telling you now is that these 4 buttons down here are actually on that layer. I want to bring in another button, and I'll close those folders off, and you'll see another one here called United. So what I want you to do is click on that and drag it onto the screen, and what that will do is give you the button that you need for this. Now I'm going to move it down towards the bottom, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line these things up. So I want to make sure that I've got the arrow tool here, or the select tool. I'm going to hold the shift key down and click on all these items. Now what I want to do is I want to modify this. I want to arrange everything. So first thing I'm going to do is arrange bottoms. So what it will do is bring the bottom of each of these buttons so they line up. Now they're not very evenly spread, so the next thing I want to do is I want to distribute widths. So what it's done now is taken the last object and the first object, and it's made an even spread of all the other objects. So that makes it look nice and neat. Now the next thing I want to do is do some coding. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Windows, and we're going to open a thing called Code Snippets. So that will give you a folder with some number of different things on it. I'm just opening up a few of these. You can see it's got drag and drop, play, movie, clip. It's got a whole pile of things there. So what I want to do is make my movie, make my button go somewhere. So I'll just open up the timeline again so you can see. I've already created one here called United, and I'll have some information on it. So I want everybody to click on the button United, and then over here we've got some controls. Now one control here is go to the frame and stop, go to and play, go to next frame and stop, etc. So I want to do the go to frame and stop, so I'm going to double click on that. Now which button do I want that to go into? In this case I want it in the button I've just clicked on. It will give me some code here, so it's automatically put the code in. Now it's told it to go to frame 5, but if you look back on the timeline you'll actually see that I've called mine United. I've actually labelled it. So now I'm going to change that to United, and if we test it, it should actually go to the frame we have over here. this frame here. Sorry about moving around the screen all the time. Should go to this frame here, the one called United. So it will go to that one. Alright, so you'll notice on the United frame, what we have here is we have the same background. Now the reason we have the same background is you notice that this background level here runs the entire way across. But if I'm on this part where the buttons are, you'll notice the buttons stop here. Now the only reason I've given this many frames here is so that you can actually put a label in there and see it. It really only needs to be one frame long because we're only going to use the first frame essentially. If I click on the United, you notice the buttons have disappeared, and that's because, as you can see here, the buttons finish at that point there. The one thing we do need to have on this is a back button, so I'm going to show you how to make a button. So I'm going to go up to Insert, New Symbol, and I want this to be a button, and I'm going to call this one back and click OK. Now when this opens up, what you'll notice over here now in the timeline is we have an up, an over, a down and a hit. Now the up basically means what will it look like, what will the button look like when it hasn't been pressed. The over is when I roll my mouse over it, the down is when I press down, and the hit is actually the area that can be active. So for this one, I'm actually going to write a word. You could go to the internet and you could find some images for back buttons. So just a quick look. Yeah, there's lots of back buttons here. Yeah, for example, you could copy that one and put it into your Flash. But what I'm going to do here is just do a simple writing. So I'm just going to write back. So you'll notice in the timeline now it's changed. So what I'm going to do is a right click here, and I'm going to convert to a keyframe. I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to change the color of the fonts. Now the way I can do that is through the properties, and notice down here, color, I'm going to make it red. Sorry about flicking from screen to screen. I'm just going to go to the down, convert to keyframe. This time I'm going to change again. I've lost my properties. I'm going to change this now to green. And one more last thing, I'll show you how the hit works. I'm going to convert that to a keyframe. This time I'm going to pick a rectangle tool, and I'm going to make a big rectangle over the top of it. Doesn't matter that you can see the color there, you won't see it on your actual program. So what I'm going to do now, it's hidden by all this stuff here, but I need to click back here on scene 1. Yeah, scene 1. Again, I'll get rid of that. If I go to the library, you see how now you've got a back button. I'm just going to click that and drag it onto the screen. I don't like its location. I'm going to move it there. If you're not happy with the size, we could do a modify, and we can do a transform. Let's make it twice as big, 200%. Yeah, my back button is now 200%. It looks a little bit better. So now we have a back button. So, and you'll notice here the back button should run from there to there. I need to program this button up. So what do I want to do? I want to click on the button. I want to go down to, I'm just going to close this actions one. I'm going to go to and stop. Click OK. Sorry, I'm bringing the code up again. Again, it wants to go to frame 5. I want it to go to frame 1, or if I look at the timeline, I want it to go to main_screen. I'm just going to use 1 for the start. Alright, now I'm going to test the movie just to see how it's going at the moment. So if I export the SWF, and what you will find happens, sorry, my computer's running a bit slow. What you'll find happens now is we have all these buttons down here. These ones have been pre-programmed. You'll notice the color changes a little bit. the United one changes colour. When I click on it, it takes me to this other one that we've created for United. But notice it goes red, and then when I click, it'll go green. So it can change colour. If I hit back, it comes back to where I want it to be. Alright, I've just closed off the movie and I've come back to the Flash document. I'm going to do something a little bit different that Flash enables you to do, add sounds. Now what I want to do is have a sound that will play when you first enter the frame. So I'm just going to use the layer here called information. That was basically just where I'm going to put some data. Now if you go back to the library, you'll notice down here that there's a couple of sound files, and you can tell by the little speaker sign there's one called film sign and another one called multimedia button click. So the first one, I'm going to click in the first frame of information. I'm going to come back to the multimedia button click. Sorry, wrong one. I'm going to come back to the film sign and I'm going to click, and I'm just going to drag it onto the screen itself. Now you notice in the timeline you get this squiggly little blue line showing you the sound there. So that'll play a sound when you play it. Now the next thing I want to do is just move some of these windows out of the way, a long way out of the way. I'm just going to click on the, double click on the United button that we created. Now again, we've got the up, over and down states. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the multimedia movie click, and again I'm just going to bring it onto the frame, the scene itself. Now you need to make sure it's double clicked. So see how everything else is grayed out behind it? That means that this button itself is active, and again you'll notice a little icon there come up with the sound. So I'm just going to play this one again. And you'll notice as soon as the frame opens you get that noise. If I come here and I'm about to click the button, if you listen you should get a click and it should go to the next screen. When I come back, you get the sound for the first screen. So that gives you sound. Now I'm going to go on to the next bit, which is going to be putting some text boxes in.